Hey everyone, in this episode, we're joined by Todd Lebo of Ascend2, a B2B research firm that works with brands like Hubspot and Marketo and Vidyard and Acton and Oracle. He's been working to better understand the challenges that marketers are facing and the different types of tools and integrations that are being implemented today. These are some of the biggest headaches, as we all know, in marketers' lives right now. And as we try to keep our strategies lean and flexible going into the new year, this is really must-have information for anyone facing bottlenecks in your tech stack. So let's get into it.
Really excited to have you on. Thanks, Todd.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to be on and hopefully provide some insight with the research and really help with a little bit of the next steps here as you go into the new year. And
So this is sort of a timely research study. We conducted it in late summer, early fall, and this is pretty timely information. So hopefully everybody will get some value out of it.
we had 187 marketing professionals participate. We actually went out to multiple survey panels to get the data. Hopefully, get a lot more clarity on what's really going on for marketers and what their challenges are and how they're tackling some of these issues. Um, so that's a little bit of the context behind the research and how we got to the data that we're going to talk about today.
I think there's a couple of observations that we've pulled out of it that are super useful, and we'll talk about those. But obviously, in the time slot that we have available to us, we don't have time to go through every single slide. There's a ton of research, a ton of charts in here, things like that really is much more comprehensive than we have time for.
Sure. So one of the things we wanted to do is try to get a kind of indication of the satisfaction rate of marketers when it pertains to certain parts of the marketing technology stack. And when you look at these charts, it's really interesting to look and see like how many people are at the far right of the chart, because those are really like the people who are truly getting what they want out of the technology. And as you see this bell curve, there's a lot in the middle, which is this area of needs to improve. You want to see things going more to the right. And we see here, there's a lot of average scores. So marketers are really showing a lot of, as we did the analysis, the average was 6 for these. The first one was on data, using data between the marketing and sales team to manage the lead flow. I think there's this crunch that marketers have on need to generate more leads, wanting to have the strategy and technology come together. And to me, this was like a problem component that we saw in the data.
I think that the thing that people are struggling with right now is the fact that there are so many tools that are legacy tools, and so we end up, for example, somebody who's in a new job comes into a new company, you end up inheriting an awful lot of these tools, and so you have individual tools that really are not playing well nicely. You're sort of stitching them together. So I see that a lot. I think the other thing is, we're seeing marketers who are in this particular scenario, they're just looking at it and they're saying, I got a fair amount of, you know, data that's coming in from multiple locations, but it doesn't give me a clear view that I can use that is centralized and is actionable all in one place. So, you see that a lot, especially in that bottom left, green, chart. Um, we have something we call life of the lead, and it's sort of one of those things where it just gives you a full view of the different content points that you have across the buyer journey. And, in this particular case, you see a lot of that kind of thing here. You don't get, or marketers are looking at this and saying, we don't have that sort of holistic view, that full funnel view. What we see is, sort of disjointed reports across multiple different types of tools.
Data is the foundation for all that we do as marketers, right? The more we understand about an individual, the more we can target the contents, the more that we can address the questions they have, providing the right information at the right time,
Yeah.
and the data is there, but because it's not unified, uh, nobody, marketing and sales, right? Both groups don't feel like they're optimizing uh, the tactics that they're using, right? Because they don't have all the information, they don't have that entire look, and in some respects, they're fighting the fight with one hand tied behind their back because they don't have that data um, presented as needed.
That's right. I think this particular slide, the other thing that sort of stands out to me is just the continued misalignment between marketing and sales, which is sort of the age of battle that both departments tend to fight within an organization. It's been going on forever.
This chart represents when we asked marketers what areas needed to be improved in their marketing tools. We only gave them the option to select 3 out of a long list of options. So when I look at this data, it's really important to look at the ranking, right? what's in this case, actually, there's, I would say, 3 tiers of data. Like the first tier is really, I would consider like 1 through 4. All those are tightly aligned together as far as percentages. And then you have the second tier and the third tier. So within that first tier, it jumped out. Sales and marketing alignment was, extremely important to marketers, like realizing that misalignment is costing them revenue opportunity. As we were going through the data and our analysts were looking at it, that definitely popped out to us as far as great importance. And I think a great maybe stress point for marketing professionals as well.
I was talking to somebody who is a B2B marketer. They are primarily focused on, essentially the manufacturing vertical. They said, I've been working, in this space for quite a while. At this point, they'd been in there for about a year, 9 months, maybe 9 months, something like that. And they said, you know, they said, I've been under the impression that the C-suite had really been aligned pretty well with what we were doing on the marketing side. But come to understand later on that they really were not. And so what was happening was the sales leader was in the meeting, the CFO was in the meeting, CEO, and we were all having these conversations. And I could see as I was reading off my, essentially my executive update report, I've been delivering this thing every week, and you could sort of see the CEO's eyes sort of darting to his screen. What was happening was the CEO was looking at it and saying, I don't understand, like there's a disconnect here. The disconnect is you're telling me that we're getting more leads and things are moving in the right direction, but yet our sales team just hit half of their quota, in the last 2 months. So what happened? Like what's going on? To sort of solve this, what they did is they said, look, I've got a visual view of what's happening in the sales and marketing or the pipeline for sales team. And I'm driving this many leads into the system, but these leads, they're not closing. These leads aren't, they're not actually converting to a deal. And so what they ended up doing was sort of giving a better view of what was happening holistically across the funnel. If you think about sales and marketing alignment and talking the language of a particular executive, it's not leads, right? Nobody's talking about leads. Nobody's talking about campaigns. They're talking about, revenue. They're talking about how much pipeline is being driven, how many closed won deals you're having, what's your win rate, all of that kind of stuff. And those are traditionally sales related metrics. But as a marketer, if you are able to connect what's happening in the marketing funnel and the marketing activities that you're driving to actual business outcomes that are turning into sales and closed won deals and driving more pipeline, all of a sudden what you have is a connection because you start talking the same language. Sales starts including you more in their conversations. Marketing, obviously gets more credit for the pipeline that they're driving. And, it's one of those, it's one of those alignment factors.
We've seen a shift from the standpoint of, a few years ago, the topic with marketing sales alignment was actually seeing, getting those two groups together
Mm,
and, the strategy behind like, we can no longer function as sales, marketing alone,
yeah.
pass it off, and then sales does their job. We've kind of, I've seen the shift where companies now are, recognizing and getting together and understanding each other, figuring out KPIs, figuring out the process. And truly now the big thing is now making sure that they have the tool integration to make that strategy come to life. We're getting ready to release some new research that we did with Jay Bear and his group on marketing and sales alignment. And then we've seen that shift. And I think I feel like right now we're seeing where now it's, also dependent on getting the technology right and getting the, getting that uh, function. And that's why when you look at this chart, and the fact it was number 4 and where it's at on this is a pretty significant thing.
I don't think there's anybody, that's probably listening to this that sort of, everybody sort of feels that pain. So here's the biggie. Let's talk through this one.
This question, we were asking you, what are your greatest challenges of your overall digital marketing strategy? And it's always interesting when we look at challenges and missed opportunities, but obviously generating quality leads was number 1 by a significant margin here. And that's been, Eric, you and I have talked about that for many years in different fronts about, we all know that, but how do you actually do that? We all want quality leads, but how do you convert from quantity to quality and do that? But number 2 on this list was attributing results to marketing. So that issue that we're seeing a lot more is just that attribution component. Like, how can we make sure that we have the right attribution so that we can make the right decisions on where to spend our money and do that quickly. In the research area, we've continued to see this attribution become more and more of a pain point
Yep.
for marketers. And I see this as an area that marketers are, going to become probably more relentless on as they move forward to getting it right.
Yeah, attribution is probably one of the hottest topics right now, especially in B2B, right? I think, we have a tendency as marketers, and sometimes we have a lot of pressure from the CFO to over rotate towards things that are only like bottom of the funnel, like performance marketing tactics. The problem with that, of course, is there's not that many people that are in market for your given product at any given time. So, you're sort of limiting the total amount of people that you can go after and capture. What you end up doing is spending more money in those channels that really aren't converting. And you end up sort of maxing out your total, your total audience size. So I think there's certainly a lot of, there's a lot of sort of question around how do you allocate and what percentage budget. I get this question a lot, and the way that I've, typically done it is I've said, 25% of my budget is really going towards performance marketing tactics. 75% of my budget is actually going towards those less trackable methods of driving demand. And, every business, every industry is different, but that's sort of a general rule of thumb.
Marketers talked about, like, they went on their gut, right? A gut feeling. And,
Yep.
and then of course, in digital, then it became we could, that's not acceptable now. You have to have, the data to prove what to do.
Yep.
And as a result of that, you're exactly right. Marketers went to the things that were easy to track, easy to get the data. But, we still had this gut aspect of knowing that there was these other marketing marketing functions and marketing tactics that were producing results We just need to get better at attributing them, right? So in some respects, it's kind of going back to your gut, not that just go with your gut, but that you try to pursue the attribution to support these areas that you have a pretty good suspicion are working well.
The best thing to do is just talk with your customers. Ask them specifically, where did you hear about us? You can include that on a form. It's funny. Like, it was one of the first things I did when I came into SharpSpring, in this new position, was to implement a "where did you hear about us" form. We had 300 or 400 respondents. I think it was closer to 400. And of those 400, about half of them were coming through things like recommendations, word of mouth, podcast. I heard you about on a on a podcast or whatever. None of those things are actually showing up in my reports, right? So it's all showing up as direct or organic or whatever. And, but that was half of the people that signed up for a demo for my product. And so, that tells me an awful lot. And then coming up with marketing campaigns, conversations, that sort of, start awareness in those kinds of areas is where I've been spending a lot of our time and our resources recently. As I said before, like, we've got, there are 18 pages of this kind of data with all of the, with the charts and the takeaways, the data. We don't have time to go through all of that, but the sort of the takeaways that we just talked about, if you just summarize them, is really making sure that your MarTech tools are able to talk to one another, pass data back and forth, so that you can get very clean, usable, sort of centralized information about your buyer journey and your customers, and then leverage that to execute on your marketing campaigns. The other is the holistic view, the full funnel view of your channels, your campaigns, the way that your prospects move through your customers, so that you can have a better series of data points to be able to talk the same language as your sales team, as your CFO, as your CEO, who are looking at things like pipeline and revenue. As a marketer, you want to be part of that conversation. You want to have that seat at the table to be able to talk through how your marketing is actually connecting to the things that matter for business outcomes. And then the third is don't over-rotate too much on the attribution side. We do have a tendency to do that, and, really stepping back and looking at what are the things that are actually driving awareness about your product, putting people into the consideration phase, and what are the channels that are able to do that, even if you can't measure them as well as you'd like. Ultimately, in my experience anyway, the only thing that really matters is that you are driving pipeline and measure and revenue. The channels matter a little bit less. The CAC per channel, et cetera, matters a little bit less when you're talking about things in a sort of a holistic, that holistic view. And then so I guess the last thing too is you can just go to sharpspring.com/DGS, and you can download that for yourself. Again, it's ungated. We're not going to spam you or anything. We're, obviously everybody's busy. We don't want to do that, but if you do want to have a conversation, we're around, happy to do it. You can very easily reach us on LinkedIn, or obviously on our website. We can hop in and have a conversation with you. I think with that, Todd, thank you very much. I appreciate it as always. You're sort of bringing some of these unique insights to the table, and, in a way that I have not seen, especially around sort of like what's going on in MarTech today. So I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks everybody for being in attendance. And I would just also say that, feel free to go to ascend2.com, and you can either shoot us a note if there's things that you feel like would be helpful as a marketer for us to research and ask questions about, because we're always trying to make research that, not just for research purposes, but to make it practical and helpful for marketers as they are trying to accomplish their specific goals, feel free to shoot us a line. We'd love to hear, what your pain points are, and maybe we can figure out ways to get some data around that to help clarify some of your questions.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.